I never believed the road itself could be cursed. Highways, after all, were just slabs of asphalt stretched across the country, dotted with green exit signs and truck stops selling burnt coffee. But that was before last summer, before the drive I'll never forget. The drive that still stalks my dreams every night when I close my eyes. Friends, you enjoy listening to stories, but you don't subscribe to the channel or like the videos. I request you to please subscribe to the channel right now, so that I get more motivation to bring you even more stories. If you help me reach 1,000 subscribers, I promise to bring you extremely scary stories with a truly real feel. 2 horror stories every single day. So go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and now let's move on to today's story. It started in Denver on a Friday night when the air still carried the shimmer of heat from the long July afternoon. I had just finished my last shift as a bartender before a much-needed break, and my plan was simple. Pack my bag, grab my camera, and finally take the road trip I'd been promising myself for the past 2 years. I wanted ghosts of Americana, deserted motels, cracked neon diners, faded murals on back alley walls. What I got instead was something far darker. I pulled onto I-70 just past midnight, the city lights shrinking behind me in the rearview mirror. The radio crackled between static and country stations, none of which kept me company for long. The farther I drove into the night, the emptier it felt, the hum of tires and engine drowning in silence that seemed strangely deliberate, like the world itself was holding its breath. Somewhere past Le Mans, long after the gas stations disappeared, I noticed the first odd thing. A black pickup truck driving behind me with its high beams on. It stayed there for miles, just 2 glaring eyes in the rearview mirror, keeping pace no matter how often I changed my speed. Finally, I switched lanes and slowed down, thinking it would pass. But it didn't. It just stayed behind me, close enough to remind me it was there, but never close enough to force me off the road. By the time I hit the Kansas border, my mouth had gone dry. I told myself to shake it off, that I was just tired. But then I saw the sign. Rest stop ahead, 1 mile. Something in me decided I had to pull off, even though every instinct screamed to just keep driving. The exit ramp curved into darkness, broken only by a single flickering light above a rusted vending machine. The parking lot was nearly empty, save for one white sedan parked crooked against the curb, its windows fogged from the inside. I pulled into a spot at the far end, keeping my headlights on just a little longer than necessary, scanning the space like I expected something to step out. Behind me, the black pickup slowed at the ramp, hesitation in its movements. For a moment, I thought it might follow me in. Instead, it idled at the corner, engine growling, headlights cutting through the gloom, before it rolled past and disappeared back onto the highway. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt something worse, unease. Because in the brief second when its headlights swept the lot, I thought they illuminated a figure standing just beyond the vending machine, a tall, still shadow that wasn't there when I looked again. I forced myself out of the car, the hot air wrapped thick around me. The vending machine buzzed when I slid a wrinkled dollar into its slot, spitting out a warm can of soda. That's when I noticed the sedan. Its driver's door was open now, though I hadn't seen anyone step out. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding thin against the restless chirp of crickets. No answer. I moved closer, every part of me screaming to stop. The inside of the car was a mess. Fast food wrappers, soda cups, a child's toy resting upside down on the dash. But what struck me most was the driver's seat. The leather was slashed, torn in long, uneven rips, as if something with claws had shredded it from the inside. The air inside smelled metallic, like rust or blood. And then the sound came. A knock, not loud but sharp, on the far side of the car. I froze. The knock came again, 3 times, deliberate. Heart hammering, I backed away, nearly tripping over a parking bumper. I scanned the lot, my eyes darting toward the vending machine, the trees, the glow of the highway in the distance. Nothing. I ran back to my car, soda forgotten on the pavement, fumbling with the keys until I finally shoved myself inside and slammed the locks down. My headlights cut across the lot as I peeled out of there, sweeping once again past the vending machine. And I swear I saw him. The figure, tall and motionless, standing exactly where the light flickered, as though waiting for me to come back. I didn't stop driving for nearly 2 hours after that. The highway stretched endlessly before me, blacktop threading through fields that looked lifeless in the moonlight. My hands were locked around the wheel so tightly they ached, and every time a pair of headlights appeared in my rear view, I braced for them to belong to that same black pickup truck. But the truck never returned. Instead, something else followed me. Around 3 a.m., the radio came alive. I hadn't touched the dial since I left Denver, letting it sit on a dead frequency that hissed and whispered like distant waves. But then, without warning, the static broke. A voice. At first, too faint to understand. A crackle, a low murmur, like someone speaking just beneath the walls of my skull. I leaned closer, turned the knob carefully until the words became clearer. You shouldn't have stopped. Every nerve in my body went icy. I twisted the dial again, desperately searching for a song, a commercial, anything human. But no matter where the needle landed, the same voice bled through, carried on the static like it owned every channel. Keep driving, it whispered. Don't look back. I slammed the radio off. The silence after was worse. I pushed the car faster, the speedometer needle trembling at 85, then 90. Lights flashed by in a blur, the sky beginning to gray with the slow threat of dawn. And just when the tightness in my chest began to ease, I crested a hill and saw it. A motel. Its neon sign buzzed. Vacancy. One of those low-slung roadside places with doors that opened right onto the parking lot, its paint sun-faded to the color of bone. I didn't want to stop again, not after the rest stop, but weariness dragged my eyelids down until staying awake became its own type of terror. I told myself it was safer than drifting off on the highway. I told myself I just needed a few hours of rest. I pulled into the lot, and that's when I noticed the white sedan, the same one from the rest stop, parked crooked in the far corner, driver's door hanging open. It couldn't have been. Not here, not again. But it was. I knew it. And as I shut off my engine, the motel's office light flickered on, and somewhere in the static silence of the morning, the radio turned itself back on. Don't check in. The motel office smelled like stale cigarettes and lemon-scented cleaner, the kind of smell that lodges in your throat. Behind the counter sat a man in his 60s, his thin hair slicked flat, his skin lined and sallow under the buzzing fluorescent light. He gave me a smile that looked more like a twitch. "Long drive?" he asked, sliding a clipboard toward me. "Yeah,
I muttered, glancing at the guest log. Only 2 names above mine, both scrawled in shaky handwriting, both checked in on the same day, 2 weeks ago. Neither checked out. The pen felt slippery in my hand as I signed. "Room number 6, the man said, slipping me a tarnished brass key instead of a modern plastic card. His eyes lingered on me longer than they should have, his lips moving like he wanted to add something. But then he just turned away, fiddling with papers that didn't seem to matter. The hallway outside was lined with peeling wallpaper and humming light bulbs. Room 6 was halfway down, its door scarred with scratches, like someone had dragged a metal edge or fingers against the wood. Inside, the room was what I expected. 1 queen bed, a sagging armchair, and a TV with a cracked remote. The carpet smelled faintly of mildew. Still, it was better than the endless road, and better than the shadows I had left behind me. I dropped my bag and collapsed onto the bed, letting the exhaustion win. Sleep didn't creep in, it hit me like a wave pulling me under. But sleep didn't bring rest, it brought sound. I woke to the TV blaring, though I hadn't turned it on. The screen showed static, black and white snow washing across the glass, and within the static, shapes. Human shapes, tall, thin, moving slowly as though behind a veil. "Get out," a voice said from the speakers, almost drowned by the hissing static. I scrambled for the remote, but it was useless, the buttons dead. The volume spiked, filling the room with that same distorted whisper I'd heard on the radio. And then I realized the voice wasn't just coming from the TV, it was coming from inside the walls. Something scraped behind the headboard, like nails dragging across wood. The wallpaper near the bed ballooned outward for a fraction of a second, as though something beneath it was pushing, trying to get inside the room. I bolted for the door, fumbling the brass key into the lock. Behind me, the TV screen flickered, and for one moment, through the storm of static, I saw the parking lot. The white sedan, and a tall figure standing in front of room 6. The screen snapped back to snow. I yanked the door open, but the lot outside was empty. The sedan was gone. The figure was gone. Only my car waited under the flickering motel sign. I didn't think twice. I grabbed my bag and ran. I didn't look back at the motel, not once. The engine roared to life beneath me as I pulled out of the gravel lot, my hands trembling on the wheel. The neon vacancy sign blurred in my rear view, flickering like it was laughing as I sped back onto the empty highway. The sun had finally started bleeding over the horizon, dull orange light spilling across the plains. Normally that would have calmed me. Sunrise meant the end of bad dreams, the end of the suffocating shadows. But on that road, it only revealed how empty everything was. No cars, no towns, just endless fields swaying in the wind, and the constant drone of tires against blacktop. I kept the radio off.
Someone, or something, was with me. Around 7 a.m., I pulled into a tiny gas station, the kind you'd miss if you blinked. The pumps looked like they hadn't been updated since the 80s, their paint peeling, their numbers weather-faded. The little convenience store attached was dimly lit, a bell jingling as I pushed through the door. A woman sat behind the counter, mid-30s maybe, with tired eyes that didn't quite meet mine. She watched me too long before speaking. Long night? She asked. I tried to sound normal. Something like that. She nodded slowly, as if she already knew the answer. I grabbed a coffee and paid quickly, eager to leave. But as she handed me change, she whispered so quietly I almost missed it. "You shouldn't be out here." My chest tightened. The words echoed, identical to the voice on the radio, the one from the motel TV. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice cracking. But when she looked at me again, her face was blank, her expression so carefully neutral it chilled me. I said, "Drive safe." I left without another word, climbing back into my car with the coffee sloshing in my hand. For the next hour, the road unfurled in silence, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't moving forward, that I was circling the same stretch of highway, towns and exits repeating like a broken record. And then I saw it. A car ahead of me. White. Crooked in its lane. It was the sedan. Back again. No matter how fast I drove or how far I thought I'd gone, it was always there waiting. This time, as I drew closer, I saw movement inside, a silhouette hunched low in the driver's seat, jerking as though in the grip of a seizure. Its head snapped up once as I passed. I only caught a glimpse, but its face wasn't human. I floored the gas pedal, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the engine. The sedan shrank in my mirror, but the image of that thing's face burned into me. It wasn't just wrong, it was empty. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth skin stretched tight where features should have been, as if someone had erased its humanity clean off. I told myself not to look back. I knew better. But instincts betray you. 10 minutes later, the mirror wasn't empty anymore. The sedan was there again. Same crooked sway in its lane. Same jerking figure behind the wheel. No matter how far I pushed the car, no matter how many miles tore beneath my tires, it always returned. At first it stayed a safe distance, headlights dim against the early morning glare. Then it crept closer, a mile, half, a few car lengths, until I could almost count the cracks in its windshield. And then something happened. The rearview mirror showed movement where the passenger seat should have been. Another figure sat beside the driver now, taller, thinner. Its head tilted slowly, unnaturally, until it faced me directly, though its body never moved. The glass distorted, but I could see enough. It had a face. Not blank like the driver. Worse. It looked like my face. Gaunt, hollow-eyed, bleeding around the mouth. A twisted, rotten version of me. I slammed the mirror up so I didn't have to see it anymore, but that didn't stop the eyes boring into the back of my skull. Suddenly, my phone, which lay dead in the passenger seat since midnight, flickered on. The screen glowed without touching it, numbers cycling across the display, as if someone or something was dialing. The speaker clicked, and I heard breathing, ragged, wet. Then my own voice whispered through. "Pull over." My throat closed. The words weren't a recording. They came in real time, matching the panic tremor in my chest, except lower, like something had crawled inside me and was speaking from a furnace under my lungs. I threw the phone to the floor, my hands clawed tighter on the wheel. Each bone in my body begged me not to obey, not to stop.
But mile after mile, my strength bled away. And that's when I saw the sign ahead. Green letters bright against the gray sky. Welcome to Ashwood, population 1276. A town, finally. But when I looked again in the rearview mirror, the sedan was gone. And yet, in the reflection of the glass just inches behind my head, I wasn't alone anymore. The welcome sign disappeared behind me as the two-lane highway curved into a hollow flanked by trees. Ashwood didn't look like much at first, just a cluster of weather-worn buildings and a crooked water tower leaning above the rooftops. Sunday quiet, though it wasn't Sunday. No cars, no kids on bikes, no dogs barking from fenced yards. All of it looked frozen. My first instinct was to keep driving, blow past the place and leave it behind. But the gas gauge was sagging close to empty, and I couldn't pretend I had another 50 miles in me. The next station might be farther than I can make. So, against every instinct screaming in my body, I slowed. The main road was lined with shuttered shops, a diner with a sun-bleached sign, a hardware store with half the windows boarded up, a hair salon still advertising perms for $19.99. All of it looked decades too late. And then I saw them. Two figures standing on the corner, a man and a woman, both dressed in clothes a generation out of date. The man in suspensions, the woman in a sunbonnet like she'd stepped out of a sepia photograph. They didn't wave. They didn't smile. They just stood there, watching me as I passed. Their eyes never blinked. I turned down the street where a faded sign pointed toward a gas station. Sure enough, a pump waited at the far end, attached to a squat building that might once have been red, though the paint now hung in strips. I pulled up, cut the engine, and all at once, the silence swallowed me again. The town wasn't just quiet. It felt listening. I stepped out, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes, thunderous in the stillness. "Hello?" I called, trying to sound casual. My voice bounced off the shop fronts and came back strange, like it had traveled farther than the street in front of me. No one answered. The pump was so old it didn't even take cards. I fumbled through my wallet, pulled out a couple of crumpled bills, and headed inside. The bell above the door jingled, but the place was empty. Dust gathered thick on every shelf, rows of expired snacks, canned soup labels curled and faded. Behind the counter stood a cash register, but no clerk. And then I noticed the bulletin board on the far wall. It wasn't filled with posters for lost pets or yard sales. It was filled with photographs, row after row of Polaroids, all of them showing travelers, standing beside their cars just like me, some smiling, some frowning, families, friends, solo drivers. At the bottom of each photo was the same word, scrawled in black Sharpie. Stay. My stomach dropped. My hands started to shake as I stepped closer, scanning the endless rows of faces, and there, about halfway down the board, my picture. Me. Standing beside my car. The photo looked like it had been taken that morning. My knees nearly buckled. I staggered backward, knocking a rack of chips to the floor. As the crinkle of cellophane echoed around me, I heard a sound from the back room. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Getting closer. The footsteps were deliberate, slow but steady, the kind of sound that didn't rush because it didn't have to. Whoever or whatever was back there already knew I wasn't leaving.
My eyes locked on the hallway behind the counter, where a strip of yellow light spilled out from a half-open door. I should have run right then, I knew it, but my body wouldn't listen. My feet felt bolted to the dusty floor, my breath shallow and ragged. The footsteps stopped. "Can I help you?" The voice was calm, too calm. A man stepped into the hallway, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the kind of clothes a gas station attendant might have worn 40 years ago. A blue coverall, grease-stained, with a name tag that read, Richard. His face was pale, eyes shadowed as though all the light in the room bent away from him. He smiled. It wasn't kind. It wasn't cruel. It was hollow. "I just need gas," I managed to stammer. He smiled just a fraction. "Of course," Richard said. "People always need gas. That's how they end up here." He stepped closer. I noticed something odd about him. His feet didn't quite match the sound of his steps. The boards creaked half a beat after he put his weight down, like the sound lagged behind the movement. My eyes darted back to the bulletin board, my photograph staring back at me. I swallowed hard. "Why is that there?" I asked. My voice cracked. Who took that?" Richard's smile widened just a fraction. "We keep records. Everyone who passes through. It's important to remember who decides to stay." "I'm not staying. I just want gas and then I'm leaving." For the first time, his smile faltered. His head tilted, like he was studying me the way a cat studies an insect. "You think you can leave?" he said quietly. That was enough. Instinct kicked back in. I bolted for the door, nearly ripping it off the hinge as I crashed out onto the gravel outside. My lungs burned, my hands shaking as I clawed for my car keys. Behind me, the bell above the door jingled once. When I turned, I nearly screamed. Richard was already standing in the doorway, though I hadn't heard him follow. His head tilted again, one hand resting casually against the frame, and for just a second I swore his features blurred, like static trying to hold the shape of a man. "Don't waste time running," he called across the lot, his voice carrying too far for the distance. "Housewood doesn't let people leave." I shoved the key into the ignition, the engine stalling once before catching. Gravel churned under my tires as I tore out of the lot. But as I hit the main street, I realized something that made cold sweat slide down my back. Every photograph on that bulletin board had been labeled, "Stay." Mine hadn't been. Mine had been labeled, "Coming back." The tires screamed as I shot out of Ashwood, the cracked pavement of its main street spitting dust into the air behind me. Relief should have hit me, but it didn't. Every muscle in my body remained coiled, tight, waiting. The steering wheel trembled in my hands, and for 10 miles I didn't look in the mirror, not once. The sun was high now, the morning haze burning off, making the road shimmer in the distance. My gas gauge wasn't happy, but it was enough to get me away. That's all I needed, to put 50 miles between me and that place. Except 50 came and went. Then 60. Then 70. And there it was. The green sign. "Welcome to Ashwood. Population 1,276. The exact same sign I'd seen hours earlier. I slammed the brakes so hard the car fishtailed across the asphalt. My heart jackhammered against my ribs, my mouth dry as dust. The sign stood there in the heat, unbothered, as if it had been waiting. No, 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 no. My voice cracked. I spun the wheel, did a tight U-turn, and floored the accelerator back the other way. The landscape blurred past on both sides, fields, broken fences, a cluster of leaning telephone poles. I drove until my hands cramped, my leg numb against the gas pedal. But 40 minutes later, it happened again. Welcome to Ashwood. Population 1,276. I pulled over, this time, skidding to a halt in the gravel shoulder. I stumbled out, breathing hard, and approached the sign like it might vanish on second glance. I touched the cool metal with one shaking hand. It was real. Too real. Behind me, the highway stretched empty in both directions. No cars, no sound, just endless road. And then something moved in the corner of my eye. In the field beyond the sign, lined up along the fence, stood a dozen figures. Men, women, children, staring straight at me. Silent. Still. I blinked, and the heat shimmer almost made me believe I was hallucinating. But no, one of them raised a hand, slowly, waving. Their mouths opened in unison. No sound came out, just gaping, wordless mouths like they were screaming quietly into the void. I staggered backward to my car, fumbling with the door, slamming myself inside before those things could move closer. My fingers shook as I jammed the key in and spun off the gravel shoulder. The road roared under me, and I swore I wouldn't stop this time. I wouldn't turn, wouldn't lose focus. I had to beat it. I had to break the loop. But the loop had rules, and I was learning them too late. The asphalt grew unfamiliar at first. A curve here, a broken guardrail there, things I didn't remember passing before. My chest filled with hope. Maybe I'd done it. Maybe I'd outrun whatever trick the town was playing. Then I saw houses. Not the gas station, not the motel, actual houses, slouching farmhouses scattered across the fields, their roofs sagging under years of neglect, windows boarded up, porches collapsed. But as I passed, something sickly tugged at my memory. These weren't new houses. I'd seen them before, hours ago. One window in particular caught my eyes. The second floor of a white farmhouse, frame rotting, shutters dangling by rusted nails. A face stared out. My own face. I nearly lost control of the wheel. The car swerved, gravel spitting under the tires as I tore my eyes back to the road. My hands were trembling so hard I nearly let go. A road sign appeared ahead. I prayed it wouldn't say what I already knew. Ashwood City Center. I sped past the sign, and that's when the road changed beneath me. The yellow lane dividers no longer stretched in straight lines. They bent, they forked, the paint itself twisted into shapes like branching veins, curling off the road into the dirt where no pavement existed. And then, as if the rules of sight collapsed, I realized something else. Ashwood wasn't just a town. It was growing. Streetlights bloomed out of nowhere, sprouting from the roadside like skeletal trees. Faded storefronts appeared in the distance where only fields had been minutes ago. A traffic light flickered red at an intersection that hadn't existed seconds before. I blinked, and the horizon shifted again. No matter how fast I drove, the town was spreading forward to meet me, building itself out of thin air. The steering wheel jerked in my hands. I fought it, but the car wasn't obeying anymore. It was turning on its own. No, not turning. Being steered. I screamed at nobody, at nothing. No, I'm not staying here! The headlights swept across another green sign. Except this one didn't say welcome. It said, "You are home." And in the reflection of my rearview mirror, the white sedan was waiting again, its driver's door wide open this time. Something was finally stepping out.
The sedan's door creaked open with a sound too loud for the distance, as if the night itself was amplifying it just for me. I gripped the wheel tighter, choking on air that felt too thick to swallow.
Something long unfolded from the driver's seat, limbs bending at angles that weren't natural, too slow, too careful. For a moment, it looked like a man climbing out of his car after a long drive. But then, its head tilted all the way back, spine arcing until it cracked like dry wood. Its face was still blank, no eyes, no mouth, nothing but skin stretched smooth across bone. I thought that was the worst of it, until the passenger door opened too. Another figure stepped out, and this one had a face. Not its own, a borrowed one. Mine. The thing was taller than me, thinner, a shadow stretched too long. But the face it wore was unmistakable, like someone had peeled my reflection off a mirror and pasted it over their skull. The lips curled in a smile I knew too well because it wasn't mine. It was a twisted version, wrong at the edges. Finally, it said, in my own voice. I slammed the gas just as the taller figure took its first step toward the road. The car lurched forward, tires shrieking against broken asphalt. For a breathless moment, I thought I'd outrun it. Then, something moved in the back seat. I didn't have to look to know. The mirror told me enough. A shape hunched low behind me, shoulders twitching in little spasms like an insect testing its legs. I couldn't see its face, only its hands, the fingers too long, pressed against the glass as if testing the limits of my car. I nearly swerved off the road. Sweat poured down my temples, soaking my shirt. "Get out!" I screamed, twisting the wheel like an idiot, as if I could throw it around with sharp turns. But it stayed. And then it leaned close. I felt the air change first, like a second breath existed just over my shoulder. My skin prickled as it spoke, voice wet, broken, using my throat but not quite right. "You're already home." The headlights revealed another intersection up ahead, street lamps glowing where no road should have existed. Ashwood again, always Ashwood. The buildings thickened around me, flickering in and out of existence like a bad signal. A diner, a post office, a theater with its letters sliding and warping on the marquee, and everywhere, faces at the windows, watching, silent. The thing in my back seat laughed softly, a sound exactly like my own laugh, but hollowed out. I gripped the wheel harder, tears stinging. "No, I'm not staying here. You can't make me." But as we drove deeper, every sign, every glowing bulb, every photograph pinned to my memory repeated the same truth. I hadn't found Ashwood. Ashwood had found me. The town had swallowed the road whole. No matter which way I turned, Ashwood was there, its streets looping into themselves, its faded houses multiplying, its silent people filling every window with blank stares. The thing in the back seat laughed softly, a sound exactly like my own laugh, but hollowed out. I gripped the wheel harder, tears stinging. No, I'm not staying here. I snapped, I screamed, slamming the brakes, the tires shrieking until the car fishtailed sideways and stopped in the middle of a cracked intersection. My chest heaved as I twisted around, ready to face it. But the back seat was empty. The door hung open. And outside, in the ghost-lit street, they all stood waiting. Dozens of them, faces erased, bodies swaying slightly, their shapes flickering like static over flesh. And at the front of the crowd was one figure that didn't flicker at all. Me. The other me stepped forward, smiling with my own mouth, eyes bright with something that couldn't possibly be human. It raised its hands, palms open as though to welcome me. You drove here. You chose the road. You chose Ashwood. And now Ashwood chooses you. The crowd spoke its final word in unison, 1,000 voices that didn't come from mouths, but from the walls, the streetlights, the sky itself. Stay. I tried to run, but my legs locked. The asphalt bubbled beneath me, cracks spreading in jagged lines that glowed like molten wires. The car groaned, headlights sputtering, as if it too was being absorbed into the streets. The last thing I saw was my double reaching toward me, his shadow folding over mine, blotting me out until I couldn't tell where he ended and where I began. And then, nothing. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't on the road anymore. I was standing in front of the gas station bulletin board, my photo pinned there, with all the others. At the bottom, in thick, black marker, one word had been scrawled that I hadn't seen before. Not stay, not coming back, just home.